I'm sure you've probably had this question asked you probably already several times, but what the hell is it with Iowa State wide receivers and the Houston Texans? Because they go and look, these are good receivers, definitely an upgrade from Hutchinson, who was their number one receiver at the time. But this is an upgrade now, a couple of years later, to Higgins and then Noel in round 3. So, yeah, is it a coincidence, or is there just something about the way Matt Campbell coaches his wide receivers?
Okay. It's somewhat a coincidence. I get it. And I will say that I am very big on Jalen Noel, and I think that Jaden Higgins' game is going to translate to Nick Caley's offense. But let me ask you, Greg, do you know anything about Nick Caserio and where he grew up?
No, where did he grow up? Iowa State?
He grew up in Ohio. Do you know anything about where Matt Campbell grew up?
Oh, okay. There you go.
They've known each other for years. It has been a relationship based out of Ohio. And there's something about the Ohio guys that they just seem to blend really well together, whether it be Ohio State players or Nick Caley, who grew up in Canton and then went to New England and now is the offense coordinator for the Houston Texans. Like, there's something about Ohio and Nick Caserio to where he just sees a name that's connected to that state. And automatically, it's like, I got to have a conversation with him. Like, you know what? Like, you live out of state and you're like, I don't know, you're in Las Vegas. And then there's like that one other random person that came from New Hampshire. And it's like, that guy has got to become my best friend because if he knows what New Hampshire culture is all about.
Sure.
Like that's what it is with Matt Campbell. He's an Ohio-based guy, but he's also a really good coach. And there's certain things to where you look at the success of Iowa State underneath him that really stands out. He was the all-time winningest coach, I think, in program history outside of Jack Trice going into year 10. And he's the only coach in program history to have 2 10-win seasons. And this past year, they went 11-3. They had the most wins in program history in a single season. So he's a really good coach, and he's doing it with talent that usually you find in the portal or usually you find as 3 stars. Or
2 stars. Yeah.
And they become pretty significant fixtures in the Big 12 and really good overall prospects because of the development. So that really does help out, is that you have a relationship with a coach. You see the proof of concept by all of these guys, whether it be a Breece Hall or a Brock Purdy or Charlie Kohler or a Will McDonald, or now you throw in Xavier Hutchinson, Jaden Higgins, David Montgomery, if you want to go back that far. You know, he was one of the very first big-time names underneath Matt Campbell. They just had the success rate of finding players who are not only really good, but they're really well equipped to handle the daily life of the NFL. And they're physically and mentally prepared to live up to the expectations of what is the daunting task of transitioning from the Saturday to the Sunday game. So I think that really helps out. And then it helps out that, again, you look at the way that this team played this past year. Houston needed 2 wide receivers. I think it was abundantly clear, knowing that Tank Dell is probably not playing in 2025. You had to get somebody that you can trust to be on the outside and somebody who can compete with Christian Kirk for multiple reps this year. And we didn't even mention Christian Kirk being brought in free agency. Yeah. I thought that was a really good move because of the way he plays his game. It's a good fit, and it's a stylistically impressive and pleasing motion for Nick Caley. So I don't have any problems with that. But you needed somebody who could be a long-term focus in the slot and somebody that would add value on special teams. The thing with Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel is they complement each other. One is known for his size and his catch radius. One is known for his route running and his speed. And so you're getting one full-fledged receiver in 2 very quality, I would say, high-end number 2 receivers. And they both last year shared the same field and got over 1,100 receiving yards. They combined for 19 total touchdowns. They combined for 163 receptions total. I mean, they were Iowa State's offense, and they knew how to separate on when, hey, 9 needs to be the number 1 focus. Okay, we're going to get the ball to 9. Hey, 13's got to be in the slot. We got to get him more involved. He's cooking up the middle of the field. All right, Jalen Noel's that option. And so a lot of people in the Texans building did not think that Noel was going to be there at pick number 71.
Sure.
They thought he was going to be gone around late day round 2. And so when you start talking to people, and I was talking to somebody that's close to the building, close to Caserio, the notion switched. They had 2 other players that they were kind of looking at pick number 79. And they see him fall, and they're like, if he goes one more, let's just make some phone calls and see if maybe we can move up one spot and get him for a 7th-round pick. And nobody's moving. So they're saying, okay, we don't know if he's going to be there. And then somehow he lands in your lap. And it may feel like, hey, why are we taking 2 receivers with our first 3 picks? But when things end up just going your way and it ends up working out for you, and you land a player
you have
that
to take advantage of that. Yeah.
Especially a player that probably should have been a top 55 pick that goes to 79, it ends up being a steal, and it makes you look really, really smart as an organization because you also didn't move up to go get him. Like, he fell to you and you said, we notice this talent. We notice how well he is going to transition in our offense, and we didn't have to give up anything to land him. Like, we don't know what the other 31 teams didn't see in him, because of what we're seeing is a guy that probably should have been off the board that we're thankful fell in our lap.
Yeah, actually, it was surprising that it wasn't the opposite, where Noel wasn't the 2nd-round pick and Higgins the 3rd-round pick. I mean, that's actually how our lads graded the receivers. I know Dave Syvertson, one of our lead scouts, loves Jalen Noel. So yeah, overall now though, the receiving unit with the addition of Kirk looks really talented, even though it's a little young with Higgins and Noel. You mentioned even though Dell may not make it this season, but they add a couple of veterans as well in Watson and Berrios to give this a very deep unit too. So is this, just looking back at the last several years for the Houston Texans, is this, like, you think maybe the deepest and more talented unit you've seen at wide receiver?
Deepest, yes. Talented, no. Last year, a healthy Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell probably should have been top 5 in every single receiving category. Like, all of them should have been at least with 800 receiving yards. All of them should have had probably around 65 to 75 catches. 2 of them should have been 1,000-yard receivers. But that's what we got to talk about, right? Because that health is such a factor that we don't mention at the beginning of the year. We just look at the roster and say, okay, you're really good, you're really good, you're really good. You fit this, you fit this, you fit this. Therefore, you have to meet these expectations. And when the Texans went 10-7, yeah, their offensive line was askew and it had a lot of issues, but there was never a consistent number 1 receiver to pair with the number 2, because week 5 rolls around, Nico Collins gets hurt, and then you got to trust now Tank Dell to either be number 1 or Stephon Diggs to be number 1. And Tank Dell's a really good number 2, but I don't think he's a number 1. Stephon Diggs is getting older. You're starting to see the wear and tear build up on him. Well, then in week 8, after he has one of his better games against Indianapolis, non-contact torn ACL, he's out for the year. Then you get back a healthy Nico Collins, but Tank Dell is dealing with a little bit of an injury. Yeah. And week 15 rolls around, and then Tank Dell breaks and shatters his leg so much that he needs multiple surgeries to make sure that it doesn't end up being completely broken and he has an NFL career. So now we're turning to Xavier Hutchinson and John Mechie and Jared Wayne and insert other player that we got from the practice squad, and Deontay Johnson's in the building for a game, and then he's pissed off at the world because he didn't get enough targets. So see you later, Deontay Johnson. We don't need you on our roster anymore. Like, it was so bad that it eventually cost Houston, in my opinion, at least 1 regular season win to where they would have been 11-6 instead of 10-7. And probably, I think it would have benefited them and maybe made it a closer game in the AFC divisional round. I'm not saying that they would have won against Kansas City, but I think that going into that 4th quarter, Kansas City would need more than just that late touchdown to Travis Kelce to feel really confident that they were in control of that game. And I felt like that Houston had its moments despite only having 1 really legit wide receiver at their disposal. Yeah. So from a depth perspective, yeah, because I think that you know what you're getting in Christian Kirk. You know what you're getting in Jalen Noel. You think you know what you're getting in Jaden Higgins. And that's not a bad thing. That's actually probably a really good thing. You think that you get maybe consistent play with John Mechie as a wide receiver 5. You know Xavier Hutchinson is competing for reps. You know that Justin Watson is a big-time receiver, so he's competing for reps. And then Braxton Berrios, when you just look at him as a player in general, he's a special teams guy that probably would add some value inside the red zone as a wide receiver 5 at worst. At best. So it's like, from a depth perspective, this is a very deep class. And I think that everybody understands their role. Wide receiver 1 is Nico Collins. Wide receiver 2 is Christian Kirk. There's a drop-off between them. And then there's a drop-off between whoever is going to be number 3. And maybe it's Mechie for a year before Higgins takes control. Maybe Higgins ends up competing more so with Christian Kirk for wide receiver 2. Jalen Noel ends up competing with Christian Kirk for wide receiver 2. But there is a drop-off, and everyone understands their assignment. You're not sitting here and saying, well, If Nico Collins isn't open, that's not a problem because you got Tank Dell. If Tank Dell is double teamed, well, you got to worry about Stephon Diggs in the slot. Now it's more so like CJ's going to have to show why he is a top 10 passer going into this year, but he has weapons that are going to get better.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to age over time.
And before we move on to the next pick, Daniel Jackson could have been drafted. Yeah, I actually like Jackson as a late round UDFA. He had a really big game against Penn State. I thought he played really well in a big game situation. So yeah, because only 2 players, I believe, UDFAs, and both actually pretty interesting.
I don't know if 3, if I'm not mistaken. 3
on offense or total?
Or on offense, it's 2. On offense,
wow.
It's 2.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, you got a bunch more in defense. Yeah, just the 2. We'll get to Cox a little bit later on. But yeah, so I don't know. Again, it's maybe too early. But even though rookie mini camp, I don't know if you heard anything about Jackson, but I guess he's got a chance to make the practice squad. So
that's all I would say. A practice squad guy where if somebody gets injured and you impress, maybe you're the new Jared Wayne or you're the new Johnny Johnson. But Houston, I think, feels really good about where its wide receiver core is right now.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a tough spot for him. Okay, speaking of Minnesota players, by the way, I did give the Houston Texans an A grade.
Oh, wow. You were nicer than I was.
Yeah, I really, because there were some players here that I really liked, including Ursary. I really like Ursary, Ariante Ursary from Minnesota. Again, same situation. I thought he played really well in some big spots, including the Penn State game that showed me a lot. He's an elite run blocker. I think he's got a good upside. So yeah, getting him in the second round, I thought was really sweet for a team that needed a future left tackle, and now they've got him.
What's really interesting is that did you see the report, or I guess the video was of New England and Houston calls, and they were going to give up. Yeah, they were going to give up the pick, and everyone's like, were they going after Travian Henderson?
That's what they said. Yeah.
And it was like, from what I've gathered, they were going after Tay Ursary.
Okay.
Like because of Jonas Salavina, the offensive lineman from Arizona, just went off the board with Miami. Miami traded up to go get him. They wanted Ursary. They thought that Ursary was worthy of a conversation at 25. And I personally would be against it. I think it would be one of the worst first-round picks. But I understand the reasoning when you're talking about Josh Simmons is coming off of a ruptured patella, and you don't know how that's going to properly heal. And you have questions about Josh Connerly when it comes to his overall size and will he transition to the NFL. Like, I understand from a who's next in line kind of conversation on offensive lineman. And Donovan Jackson's off the board at this point because he went to Minnesota at 24. Yeah, Ursary belongs in that conversation, but they were going to move up all the way to pick number 38 to take him. They ended up only giving up a future third-round pick. I think it was the third-round pick that they got in the deal with New York to be able to go land Ursary at pick number 48 with the Las Vegas Raiders, which, again, pretty good value for a guy that you're not expecting to start week 1, but you do expect him to be your hopeful franchise left tackle in place of Laremy Tunsil. His film is good. I mean, you watch his film and what he was able to accomplish as a 2-year starter at Minnesota, over 1,400 pass blocking reps, only allowed 4 pressures and 1 sack. He played for a Minnesota team that was very good at running the football the last several seasons, including last year. You have a running back in Joe Mixon that you want to be a focal point of your offense and an offensive system that is going to predicate on the run, being such an emphasis with Nick Caley. I think that's a good thing. I think the other thing that's really, really important, and D'Amico, I'm glad, got ahead of this. He said that they drafted him to play tackle. He's going to be a tackle. The development for a player, whenever we see them make them jump to the NFL, unless you know that they are not going to handle the life of being a tackle, let them start off a tackle and don't try to pigeonhole them and say, well, we're going to get them at guard so they can get reps.
Sure.
Because of the way that your footwork is and the way that your hand placement is and the way that you go about certain players and how you have to attack the inside shoulder on a defensive tackle versus the outside shoulder on a defensive end, it's going to confuse you. And then eventually when they ask you to move back to your natural position, you're going to be acting like how you went in the position you were just playing in. And nobody wins in this. Ursary doesn't win because it hurts his confidence and it hurts his overall play style. And the Texans don't win because of now you have a liability at left tackle for a guy that probably should have just been playing left tackle until it was time for him to start in place of Cam Robinson. So I like that they're leaving him at left tackle. I do think that when you look at this overall draft class for offensive linemen, it's a good class. It's not a great one.
No.
I think that Will Campbell is a guy, whether or not he plays left tackle or left guard long term in the NFL, I think he's a better guard than he is a tackle. But you can try him at tackle. Let's figure it out. I think he is an all-pro caliber talent. I think Kelvin Banks is a Pro Bowl caliber left tackle. And then there's a drop-off between just having serviceable linemen. If Ursary can be like a Taylor Decker for the Detroit Lions,
Sure.
Manageable, very serviceable, very well liked, very well respected inside the locker room, doesn't allow a lot of people to get past him, keeps his quarterback upright. You don't need to have a Laramie Tunsil to be really good. I would much rather have a Taylor Decker with an all-pro guard and a future potential all Pro Bowl center than have a bunch of holy crap, you can't play guys and an all-pro tackle, because if all I'm doing is I'm getting one guy. I think Ursary's potential is in that range of the maybe Joseph Noteboom, maybe a Taylor Decker, maybe a Jake Matthews, solid overall left tackle that is going to be a leader in the locker room. And his story of how he went from being homeless in Kansas City to getting small school offers to eventually proving to PJ Fleck that he was worthy of a scholarship to becoming the Big Ten All Offensive Lineman of the Year, a two-time Big Ten All First Team All Offensive Lineman, one of the best overall pass protectors and a third-team All-American. I mean, he knows the trials of what it takes to fight through adversity, and I think that's a really smart overall move to get that guy. Do I expect him to start week one? No. But I think that's why you brought in Cam Robinson on a 1 year, $12 million deal. Was, hey, we need stability right now. We'll worry about the rest later.
And there's, even though Tunsil's gone, and that's a big loss, obviously, but still, there's a lot to like about the offseason with the offensive line. There's depth there now. I mean, there's Trent Brown, Tomlinson. I mean, you're not asking these guys to be full-time starters either. And then Eli Cox, we mentioned him. He had a very good career at Kentucky, SEC center. So what do you think about him as a UDFA? And do you think that there is from center, right guard, right tackle, is that all like penciled in right now? Is it just going to be a big time competition? Or do you think that what you see here on the depth chart is what you're going to see week one?
What you see on the depth chart, maybe minus Lakeland Tomlinson and Juice Scruggs, is what you will see week one when they face off against Los Angeles Rams, unless there's an injury. But I do think that Tyus Howard is going to be playing full-time at left guard.
Sure.
I think that Blake Fisher is going to have an entire season to prove he is the future right tackle, because he was a second-round pick. And the crazy part is also, Greg, he was a second-round pick that you traded up for. So when you give up draft compensation, you kind of want them to hit a little bit faster. Like, that's why the Juice Scruggs pick is so disappointing at this moment, because a lot of people didn't think Scruggs was worthy of a second-round grade.
No.
A lot of people thought he was a day 3 talent. You traded up to get him. Like, you moved up to pick number 63, and then the very next pick was a Pro Bowl wide receiver who's been killing it in Denver, and Marvin Mims, that I was told by multiple people, Houston was down to Marvin Mims and Tank Dell. Those were the last two receivers that they were selecting between, and CJ really liked Tank Dell, so they said, all right, well, Marvin's gone. We got to take Tank. Because, like, those were the two. And so you miss on that pick when you could have traded up and you would have gotten an all-pro caliber return man. You would have gotten a Pro Bowl wide receiver and a really good wide receiver number 3 for your system. So you got to hope that Blake Fisher can actually meet those expectations, just like Ariante Ursary, but Ursary gets that bye because if he is a rookie just getting acclimated to the NFL. Besides that, that's your starting offensive lineman. Eli Cox, he was fine for Kentucky. Kentucky had a really bad year when it comes to the overall record and just the execution underneath their new offensive coordinator. But still, I think the big blessing is that you're an offensive lineman on a team that needs help. I mean, it needs help and it needs stability. And I don't know if that means that Eli Cox will eventually surpass Jarrett Patterson as a starter. But if you're telling me that Austin Deckles and Zach Thomas and even Ladarius Henderson, who a lot of people in Houston love for some reason, I don't, the infatuation for this guy, dude.
Wow.
It's like, it's mind-boggling. Like Kay Adams opened up the jar because Twitter decided one time to say Ladarius Henderson's name. And ever since then, people are like, Ladarius Henderson's going to start for the Texans. I'm like, he is barely going to make the active roster. Like, that's what you got in this dude. But like, when you look at that and you're saying to yourself, okay, well, is that what we have? Eli Cox should at least compete. He was a very good run blocker for 2 seasons out in Lexington. He improved as a pass protector, I think, in his junior year, regressed mightily in his senior year. But he got to go up against quality competition when he was at the Senior Bowl. So I think that does help out when it comes to his overall trajectory. You're talking about a guy who's a depth piece that maybe will end up panning out and being something, but he's in a team that needs help on the offensive line. So it's like, it's real. Of the two to make the active roster between him and Daniel Jackson, it's Eli Cox by a country mile. Like, there is a clear separation between them just because of the position.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, let's see what he looks like in his first training camp. Let's see what he looks like in his first preseason game. It could be worse. I mean, it really could be if you're
absolutely.
It could be worse if you're the Texans.
Hey, it wasn't even a draft pick.
Yeah.
So did you say you think Tomlinson should be right now considered the starting right guard?
I don't know. I think there's the open competition. I think that Robinson is starting at left tackle. I think that Howard is starting at left guard.
That's all. That's the only thing was really solid, right?
Yeah.
Those two.
I think that Patterson's going to start at center.
Okay.
And I think that Fisher is going to start at right tackle.
Okay.
I think everything else when it comes to that right guard position could change.
Right.
And again, it could be Tomlinson ends up being really good, and Howard ends up being really good, and Scruggs ends up being really good, and Blake Fisher's the odd man out. So then Tomlinson moves to left guard, Howard moves to right tackle, and you leave Juice Scruggs at right guard. But like, as of right now, the one position is Juice Scruggs, Lakeland Tomlinson, Ed Ingram. Who is going to be that starting right guard week 1 against Los Angeles? That, I think, is the mystery.
And by the way, they're going to stick Ursery and keep him at left. He's not going to be in on the right tackle spot.
Not right now. Okay. Trent Brown is going to be on the right side when he's fully healthy. And remember, he's coming off of a season-ending injury. So you don't
What's his
know
status?
We don't really know right now.
Okay.
I think that we'll get a better gauge next week when camp breaks and we see the voluntary players out there. I think it'll be a little bit easier to figure out where he is progressively and when he will be back. If he's out there at practice, it's a pretty good sign that he'll be ready for week 1. If he's not, it could just be that he's a veteran that's missing voluntary camp. I mean, like we'll know more when it comes to mandatory camp at June.
Okay. Let's now talk about the pick. I believe this was the pick that they eventually traded up anyway from this. This was the Giants' extra third rounder to get Jalen Smith and to get him in the 3rd round. And Smith can play a variety of positions. So do you know already what their plan is for Jalen Smith?
He's probably going to be a nickel defender right now. They don't think that he'll play on the outside. They don't think that his body is big enough on the outside. It was interesting. I actually asked D'Amico when they drafted him, you went after Kalen Bullock, who was a multi-purpose defensive back at USC too. And did you want to try him out at corner or were you going to try him out at safety? And they said, well, we don't want to play him in the nickel. We think that he's probably best suited at safety, but maybe we'll give him some reps at corner. And it was kind of the same feel with Jalen Smith, but instead of corner, it was safety. It was, hey, we're going to try him out in the nickel, and then we're going to try him out at maybe safety to go ahead and get some reps behind a CJ Gardner-Johnson and behind Bullock. But he's probably going to be a nickel player. They expect him to be a day 1 contributor on special teams, which again, are you drafting a 3rd round pick to be a special teams talent when you need help on the defensive line, when you need help at linebacker, when you need help at tight end? Is that really how you want to use your pick? I'm not a GM, so I'm not going to sit here and argue with you on this one.
Yeah, this was the questionable pick out of the draft for me. Was to pick him in round 3. Yeah.
If you and here's the thing, if everyone's saying that he's going to be available in round 4, you have the pick at the start of round 4. Why not just use the pick at the start of round 4 to take him?
And you traded up 2 spots to get him.
Yeah. Like that's the thing is that you could have gotten him still in round 3. You could have gotten him in round 4 if you wanted to, but you moved up to get him. Why? Like what was the reasoning behind it? But they love him as a tackler. They think he can make plays when it comes to open field plays on the football. They like his speed. They like his overall upside as a special teams standout. They lost Chris Boyd this offseason, so that's a name that you got to remember that such a big influence on the special teams. This really does feel like a Frank Ross pick. Like, hey, let me get me a gunner that is going to make a lot of plays on the outside.
Okay, well, that makes a little bit more sense then. Not that I approved it, but okay. Let's stay in the defensive backfield with Jalen Reed. And I get to see Jalen Reed a lot this past year doing Penn State games, post games. And I really like Jalen Reed. I
Oh, he's a
like the
great
fact,
player.
yeah, getting him in the 6th round, especially. I think he's got great instincts. I think he's a really good player that can go either. I prefer him in the box because I think he could be a little bit more of a difference maker there, but he's also more than capable of being a deep safety. But where do you think they have plans for Jalen Reed?
He'll be in the box, I think, a little bit more when they run a lot of quarters. He'll be in that 8 to 12 range. We asked him when he got drafted, who was a player that you modeled your game after, and he says, I love watching CJ Gardner-Johnson. Just the way that he hits, the way that he carries himself, his demeanor, his poise, his mentality, and the way he makes plays on the football. So you look at your depth chart, who's he backing up? You see it.
Yeah.
It's gonna be Jalen Reed. It's not gonna be Kalen Bullock. They're gonna have him. I think if anything, you'll see if you were to make a switch, in my opinion, it probably would be Jalen Reed behind CJ Gardner-Johnson and Jimmy Ward behind Kalen Bullock, personally. But
okay,
that's neither here nor there.
That's all right. That's helpful.
Where they are, but he is a hitter. Like, the thing that you want him for is his physicality, his instincts, his identity to make plays on the football, make plays on the football player. Read and reaction time, not afraid to go ahead and deliver the shoulder when it comes to run support. I think that he is limited in coverage. Limited is not a bad thing. There is always a role for a 6th round pick who can be something in coverage. And when that role for you maybe is, hey, I'm going to attack the ball carrier, I'm going to go one-on-one against tight ends, that's a role. And eventually that could carve out some significant playing time for you, the way they did for Bullock last year, the way they did for Laster last year, the way they did for a Christian Harris or Henry To'oTo'o before. They had these niche roles that said, hey, we need you out here for this specific play. Can you do this? Yep. Automatically under speed, understood the assignment, and continue to move. Like, that might be what Jalen Reed is for his rookie season.
I have to also ask you about because there were 2 UDFAs here in the secondary. The one that sticks out to me is Huzzy, because he had obviously that great FCS career, first team FCS All-American, freshman All-American, good punt returner, plays with North Carolina. Statistically, the production is there. So I know he's not a very big kid. I get that. That's probably why he is where he is. But still, I think a kid like that could make the team, or at least, be on the practice squad and then make the team later in the season.
You're looking at guys at this point, say, okay, let's go through. Miles Bryant, Elijah Huzzy, Russ Yeast, D'Angelo Ross, Keedron Killian, Casey Osai, Woodward, Jackson Woodward. I'd even throw Nick Neum in that list. I'd probably throw Jamal Hill in that list. I'd probably throw, maybe if you really want to, Ronald Darby in that list. All of those guys are fighting for who can be that special team standout that is going to be a 53-man player. Like that's what it comes down to for a guy like Huzzy.
Sure.
And it's unfair, and maybe you think that his overall play can transition to the NFL faster, but right now, he is just trying to make the active 53.
Yeah.
And if you can't make the active 53, that's totally fine. What's the next best plan? Making the practice squad, or better yet, making the active 53, knowing that, say, like a Ronald Darby is going to clear through waivers and he's going to be back on the practice squad. Eventually, you'll just be active for that one game. Then people will forget about you. Then you're released. Then you're put on waivers. Nobody claims you. Then you're on the practice squad and you're going to top the rest of the year. Because we see that all the time. Like we see it all the time. Like, one guy that they know, hey, we don't want to lose him, but we don't think that he is good enough to be an active player. But we could afford to lose this guy and bring him back on the practice squad. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep you on the active roster. You're going to play week 1. Then we're going to release you. What we're going to do is we're going to sign you to the practice squad the second that you clear waivers. And then you're a part of our team still. This is just the best way to guarantee that you're a part of our long-term future in some capacity. That's why I think a guy like Elijah Huzzy can be. But all of them are fighting for that spot on, hey, can I be that special team standout? Like, do you remember AJ Boye when he was coming out of Central Florida? It's not Elijah Huzzy, but what it is it's kind of that same feel. Make a name for yourself as a practice squad player. Make a name for yourself as a special teamer. Make a name for yourself as a rotational cornerback. Make a name for yourself as a starting quarterback. Go get paid a bucket load of money by Jacksonville because they don't know what they're doing down in Duval County. Like that's what the life of a guy such as an Elijah Huzzy is going to be.
Okay, Let's stay on defense to wrap up before we go to the rest of the offensive picks in the draft, because Key Hamilton out of Rutgers, me being a Rutgers guy, know very much about Hamilton. And I think Hamilton is, even though he's a 7th-round draft pick, I think he's going to be a very good contributor for the Texans in their rotation. I think he's going to be around for a long time. So I think to get him in the 7th round, which is where he was, suspected to go, I think it was a nice add-on.
That was the best pick of day 3. Personally, like I thought far and away it was the best pick of day 3 because of it addressed 3 main things. Number 1, somebody that can play the run. Number 2, an interior defensive lineman. And number 3, a position of need. You didn't need another running back. You wanted another running back. You didn't need another safety. You wanted another safety. You didn't need a Jalen Smith. You wanted a Jalen Smith. You didn't even need Luke Lachey. Lachey may end up being somebody that adds value as a blocker, but you didn't need a Luke Lachey. You needed a young piece to your defensive line that you think may end up having some upside to when a Tim Settle, a Sheldon Rankins, a Danico Autry, a Kurt Hinish, a Mario Edwards Jr., a Foley Fotokoski, they all walk in free agency because if they had a really good season and they want to get paid and they want to be properly compensated, you have somebody that you can say, maybe not a starter, but he played 15% of defensive snaps last year. Now we can bump that up to 35 and let's see what we got. I think that's why it makes so much sense. I thought it was a really good player. Experience is something that you can't be taught. You can only learn it over time. He's going to be one of the more experienced defensive linemen. I mean, he had, 40 career starts or 40 career games and 38 career starts during his 3 seasons out in Piscataway. So it's like, there's a lot to like about just the experience factor of, hey, you know what it's like to be a starter. You know what it's like to go through the daily doses of playing in the Big Ten. Sign on up, come on down to Houston, go impress D'Amico Ryans.
Before we leave the defensive side, I just want to also add the 2 guys that were UDFAs in Tafuna and Woodard, because Woodard had a very good career in the last couple of years at UNLV. I mean, big time production, and Tafuna actually played pretty well from what I hear at the All-Star game tune-up. But him being a UDFA is pretty much where he belongs. But Woodard, I'm not surprised he wasn't drafted. But again, highly productive college player. Have you heard anything about either of those kids, or even Asai, who is the other UDFA we haven't talked about?
Not really. I mean, unfortunately, there's not really much to go off of right now. So
too early.
I wish I could say something, but unfortunately, right now there's not.
All right, let's move on over to the offensive side for the remaining picks, and starting with Woody Marks, who had a big season last season in the Lincoln Riley. Of course, everybody talks about his production as a receiver. Why did Houston target Woody Marks?
The thing with the Nick Haley offense is you want a pass catcher out of the backfield, like that security blanket that can help you win your one-on-one battles. And so to me, that's what this is you're getting yourself a very qualified pass catcher who is going to take pressure off of CJ Stroud to connect downfield. I mean, this is a guy that has over 230 receptions during his college career at Mississippi State and at USC. So he's going to add value as a 3rd down runner, but you really brought him in to be the pass catching weapon. And there's something about those offenses that have been more high profile and made an impact on going deeper to the postseason. They usually have that element out of the backfield that can move the chains. And it's another thing that defense coordinators have to worry about. And I think that's what Woody Marks brings. I wasn't a fan of the pick because if you gave up a 3rd round pick in 2026 to land him, but from the stylistic standpoint, there's nobody who fits the Texans offense better going into this upcoming fall than Woody Marks. From a standpoint of simply, he is going to live up to the expectations of what we expect. Woody Marks fits the bill. 100%, no questions asked.
Okay. You mentioned Lachey, and he's going to add depth to the tight end room.
He'll be a blocker. I mean, like if anything, if he ends up being anything more than just a guy that adds value as a blocking tight end in the red zone, maybe gets a few touchdowns here and there, you're cool with it. But they brought him in to be a blocker. I mean, you look at Cade Stover, you hope that he improves. Brevin Jordan is a receiving threat, and Dalton Schultz, who the hell knows what he is at this point.
Okay. And then last pick was Graham Mertz. And I got to tell you, with Mertz, very interesting because I remember the first couple of years, all I heard as being a Big Ten guy was, "Oh, Graham Mertz, he's so awesome. You watch. We're looking out for Wisconsin. Graham Mertz, this guy's great." And then every year he wasn't great. And then he goes to Florida, and I kind of figured, all right, well, I don't know what they're doing. And then he actually blossomed into a really good quarterback, a very accurate quarterback. I love the way he throws the ball on the run. I mean, he is really, he does it so well, and he's highly productive in that area. So I know he was injured. A little bit surprised he was actually drafted, but this is partly why, some of the picks later on I actually like, because I like Mertz. I actually think Mertz could be a really good number 2 quarterback down the road. What did you think about the pick?
So there's a running joke that I have with a couple of friends out in Gainesville because they asked me about him and what I thought. And I said he was mashed potatoes. And why I called him mashed potatoes. Nobody complains if you have mashed potatoes as a side dish.
No.
Like in college, you could have had worse than Graham Mertz. Like there were quarterbacks out there that you're looking at and well, maybe I get that. Like maybe I get that, like those green beans, those Cajun green beans, or maybe I get a macaroni and cheese casserole, and that's Taylen Green, or maybe I get the Brussels sprouts, the spicy Brussels sprouts, and I love Brussels sprouts, and that's Nico Iamaleava. But nobody hates mashed potatoes. Nobody hates a guy that can end up giving you a completion percentage of 72%, moving the football, not putting it in harm's way, having the highest touchdown to interception ratio because he never has a turnover when he's at Florida. But unfortunately, he's coming off of an injury. Yeah. Like that's the negative right now. Like, okay, maybe you added too much butter to the potatoes, and now it's a soup kind of feel than it is actually that fluffiness that you love when you're eating mashed potatoes from mom and pop's house when you're growing up. Or it's doused too much in gravy, and like all you're getting is the gravy and no potato. Like that's an ACL injury. I think that he is a very solid backup quarterback that you hope never has to play and never will see action in an actual NFL game. But again, it's mashed potatoes. Could have worse. You could have all these people that are set upside and have all this potential and flash, but hell, their arm mechanic is just a little bit too far wonky to the outside, and so the release point leads to interceptions. This guy is a little bit too forceful when it comes to his reads, and he feels under pressure too much. So it's like we got those candied yams, but those marshmallows, they're burnt on top. It's like, not too much. It's like Graham Mertz is not going to put the ball in harm's way. He's going to know his assignment. He is the pocket passer. He's not going to try and take off on a run. He's going to make smart decisions in the pocket. Hopefully, I can only say that when he is at practice and never in a live game. Like, that's what it is.
Well, is this a pick at all because of anything to do with Davis Mills in the next year or two? Is there any concern with him moving on, or why did they make the pick?
There's not a concern with him moving on, but like number one, you need a QB3 because you carried 3 last year. Technically, like you didn't, but you did. You didn't cut Case Keenum because you have too much respect for him and what he means to the city of Houston. But you would have probably carried 3 quarterbacks last year, and Keenum would have been fighting for that QB2 role, like we saw in 2023. And Mills is going into a contract year. We signed the 1-year extension last year to be the backup, and I think that he likes Houston, but you never know. I mean, one bad injury. You're one bad injury away from somebody calling you and saying, what do you want from Mills? Like, he started multiple games. He's been good enough in a terrible situation to put up decent numbers. I mean, because he was. Like, from a standpoint of backup quarterbacks in the NFL, Houston, I would say, probably has a top 10 backup. Because if you know what you're getting in Mills, and Mills is a really solid player. He's not elite by any means. He's not terrible by any means. He's really, really solid. He can get you 15 starts in a season, and you won't wow teams and go to the playoffs, but you'll be good enough to stay in that 7-10, 8-9 range with the right supporting cast around you. And so somebody is going to probably take notice of that this offseason and pay him a little bit more than what he's worth. And you need to have a backup plan.